All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get started? As I said, I'll probably have to pause every now and then to admit people because I think there's a few more coming. But I want to thank you very much for being part of this evening's event. It's always a pleasure to host these events for our really wonderful writers and artists. And we have a very nice group here tonight, as you can see, people from all over the country, the East Coast, the West Coast. And that's really the wonderful thing about Zoom is you can attend, wonderful events like this from anywhere without even leaving your home. So this really is a great thing. So thanks for coming tonight to hear and see work from poets Jim McCord and Marjorie Maddox. Jim, you want to raise your hand there? There's Jim McCord, Marjorie, and artists Carol McCord. Where's Carol? There's Carol, and Anna Lee Hafer, who is somehow lost. There she is. Okay, I thought I lost her on my screen. All right. My name is Christine Brooks Cody. I'm the founder of Shanti Arts. We started in 2011 publishing a literary and arts journal, Still Point Arts Quarterly. I know some of you have seen this because some of you have been published in this. After this started, we began publishing books covering a number of topics and genres, including poetry, memoir, spirituality, nature, and travel. I invite you to look through our book catalog. I will give you the website. This is my very low-tech visual aid here. I usually just read off the website address and people go, huh, what'd you say? So I thought I would show it to you. So this is our website and you can go on there and check out our entire book catalog. And also look at the journal, the quarterly. We've been publishing the quarterly now for about 12 years. And so there are lots of past issues online and you can download them in their entirety. So enough content to get you through the long coming winter. There is poetry and fiction and essays and lots of wonderful art. So again, go on our website. I'll bring this out once again. Go to our website and feel free to download our past issues. I think you'll like them a lot. All right. Let me say a couple things about Zoom by way of housekeeping. Most of you are muted. If you're not, if you wouldn't mind, on the lower left, click that button that looks like a microphone and you'll get a red line going through that. And that indicates that you are muted and we cannot hear you if you are speaking and we can't hear any of your background noise, which is important. So if you would keep yourself muted. At the end of the presentations, there will be some time for questions and discussion. And at that time, if you want to speak, you can certainly unmute yourself and go right ahead. I also suggest that you open your chat box. At the bottom of your screen, you'll see a button that says chat. And if you click that, there'll be a white space that will open on the right. And feel free to post comments or questions as we go through the events tonight. It's kind of interesting and fun to watch people's comments live. You know, people post things like, wow, that was a really good point, or I really love that photo, or, you know, what a great, poem that was. And it's really, it kind of brings everybody together to have those comments. So feel free to use that chat box. If you're looking for it, if you click on the chat on the bottom, and then over on the right bottom, it says type message here, and you can put your comments there. And I'm going to put a few things there as well that you can open at your leisure and download if you want more information about what we do. All right. Oh, I want to note that the books we will be discussing tonight can be purchased through tomorrow at 20% off. So go to our website. And this is the discount code, which gets you 20% off. Okay, so I Zoom sale. So that'll get you 20% off on the books. And I'll be posting, again, in the chat box, links to that. So that'll make it easy for you. I do want to point out this event is being recorded. We posted on our website and people can look at it later if they were not able to make it tonight. So just so you know that we are recording. All right. Well, let me give you just a rough agenda so we all know what to expect over the next hour or so, and say a few words by way of introduction. First of all, tonight we will hear from Jim and Carol McCord, husband and wife. Remember the title of this event, Inspiration, Closer Than You Think. Jim is an emeritus professor of English literature whose poems have appeared in a wide variety of journals and 4 published books. Carol is a lifelong hiker and former yoga instructor whose photographs have been exhibited all over the country and many, many times in our own journal, including the most recent issue, which came out last week. And we're always delighted to have her work in our journal. They will talk tonight about their extensive travels and the inspiration that they glean from one another. We have published 2 books of theirs. The first one was 2 Lenses, 4 Europes, and the second was Beneath the Midi Sun. And these actually were published in both hardcover and softcover. The hardcover makes a wonderful keepsake and is a real gem. And they will be, of course, talking more about those books and reading and showing you work from them. All right. After Jim and Carol do their presentation, we will hear from Marjorie Maddox and Anna Lee Hafer. Mother and daughter, again, inspiration, closer than you think. Marjorie is a professor of English at Commonwealth University in Pennsylvania, and she is a creative writer, having published over a dozen books of poetry, as well as several children's books. And I think maybe 1 or 2 for young adults, is that right? Yep, okay. All right. Anna Lee is a visual artist, graduated from Roberts Wesleyan College in Rochester, New York. Her work is heavily influenced by surrealist painters such as René Magritte, Salvador Dali, and Pablo Picasso. Now, they will be talking tonight about this book, which has the most amazing painting on the cover, and also, in my opinion, has an amazing title, In the Museum of My Daughter's Mind. That is just a wonderful title, I think. And so this is the book they did together, and they will be reading and showing work from it. I do want to point out that we published an earlier work by Marjorie, Heart Speaks is Spoken For, and she did this one with photographer Karen Elias. Karen, wave your hand because I know she's here, which is also a really beautiful book in color, just really lovely. So can't see a lot of the color right now. There's one. So those are the books we've done for Marjorie. All right, I am going to turn it over to Jim and Carol. And as I said earlier, after we hear from Jim and Carol and Marjorie and Anna Lee, there will be a few minutes for questions and comments. And again, if you post them in the chat box, I'll try to organize them for later. All right, Jim and Carol.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Christine, so much for having us here. Thank you for the wonderful introduction. So am I on the screen now or what? Okay, so I just wanted to say, Christine, how much we appreciate all the work that you have done for us. The design, the editing, and everything for our books was really, really lovely. And we thank you so much for that. Also, all that you've done for the journals over the years and supporting all the different writers and artists has really been lovely. Your own writing, when we read the journals, it's just beautiful. So thank you for all of that. And I also want to thank you for pairing us with Marjorie and Anna Lee. It was a real delight to read the poems and see how the mother and daughter work together. It's obviously inspiration comes in different ways, I think, from a mother-daughter than from a husband and wife. But we can compare those as we go along. So thanks again. I'd like to start. Okay. So I'm starting with a poem of Jim's called Yorkshire Dales with a photograph of mine, Yorkshire Dales is right, as well. So, so just, is the screen up the way it should be and everything for everyone?
It looks good to me.
Okay, great. So, in our times together, we've spent a lot of time in Northern England and the Yorkshire Dales, in the Yorkshire area in York, as well as Yorkshire Dales and Moors. And we fell in love with this area. And so we think this typifies our work in that it's a shared experience, a shared inspiration. So I'm inspired by the beauty of it, and Jim was inspired to write the poem, which read.
Okay. Just thinking about you're not able to see the printed poem at the same time as the photograph on the screen. If you open the book, in fact, if you haven't had the book in hand or did have it in hand, you'd see them facing each other. And I would guess when you turn the page and look at that the photograph would catch your eye, certainly before the poem itself. And then you might spend a little time with the poem, go back to the photograph. But really what any writer or photographer would like is for you to look more closely at both. You would, do that, and you'd have a conversation in effect with each. But then I thought it was kind of neat too that you'd also be experiencing a conversation between photograph and poem, no matter how challenging or difficult the poem was. And you'd be looking much more closely at the photograph for the subtleties rather than just see it as a wow. So here, and I'm going to guess too, I'm going to take a guess that Marjorie, you and Anna Lee might be going along with that as well. Attention. So here's Yorkshire Dales. This is for our son, Eric. Yorkshire Dales are my kind of poetry. An ancient landscape worked and reworked with keen eye, keen mind, by farming generations for living's sake. Only the ridges, rough coats of moorland bracken, flecked with heather, are free from human touch. Upland fields spread shaggy as their sheep, midland fields gentle as pampered cattle. Woodlands swell, stone walls flow down to rivers that twist like thick jungle vines or sweet pea coils. Despite the rub through centuries, there's grace here between man and land, animal and rock, present and past. At Coniston, gray wall set stone by stone gives more light than gray sky. Blackbirds, hardy as flint in Littendale, nest in rooted post holes of derelict barn. In Dentdale, a gray heron drifts above late summer shallows, glides beneath a packhorse bridge, lands soft as down on sandy banks, cleared with care by farmers' hands.
So talking about inspiration, they were inspired by each other, but basic inspirations as we've gone through our creative process and in my photography. So I was born and raised in Southern California and spent my childhood as much as I could hiking, exploring. We lived by the water. I spent a lot of time in the ocean and the beach, and all of these things were inspiration, are inspiration for me, and how I had such a love for nature and being out in nature. As time continued, Jim and I had the good fortune of spending a lot of time outside of the country, living in various places, and that has extended the areas of my inspiration into art, into history, into architecture. And so we're going to go on and give some examples of that. So my earliest inspiration being being nature. Okay. So what is always important to me for inspiration is really just being open and being open to whatever is there. So this is a photograph of a natural object, this beautiful great blue heron. But none of this was planned. So I'm out on a walk and I'm always open to what I see. And so just by good fortune, the light and everything, there was this beautiful bird here. And so it inspired me to take the photo, obviously. And Jim has also written a poem about the blue heron. So blue heron. Some say the world will end in silence, pitch black as night. Some say in blast of white. I admit I'm drawn to light and often wish to glide unruffled as this heron toward diamond-strewn waters, tinted celestial blue with only a smudge of shadow. But light can also blanch what it touches, turn sparkling waters into flecks of stubble, dull, luminous feathers, dissolve delineation. Under this warping light, waters appear nothing like the backdrop of black at the great blue's back, studded with constellations. Also, as my inspiration, history. I've always been fascinated with prehistory, probably from when we were first in England and first saw Stonehenge so many years ago that they allowed people just to walk in it. From then on, I just loved being in the presence of these objects and explored them in many different places. When we were in Portugal about 5 years ago, we landed up in a place just coincidentally where there was one of the largest and most important areas of these not just standing stones, but dolmens, which are burial chambers, and standing stones and with various different meanings. So again, walking, hiking, and just being with these stones. And Jim has a poem here for these particular ones are very famous, and there's like 3 sets of different circles, all done at varying different times. And many of them are carved, and some of the carvings, if you're very careful and if you're in the right light, can pick out these carvings. So almendras cromlech. A cromlech is a word for a stone circle, but there's a few of them here. Also, this can get kind of popular. I had to come really early in the morning sometimes to get photos, so I wouldn't get lots of people. But the people didn't bother Jim, so like, it's hard to separate people from the stones, each a figure, each a form. Strong granite back, straight, upright. No two alike in height or weight. Features or complexion. Some dimpled, some engraved with cryptic lines, some with rings like bullseyes. A few grand central stones isolated from clusters, small ones in two circles, aligned with sun, moon, stars. Its reason to be a mystery, perhaps a celestial sight to beg good fortune from some god, or thank it for a feast. Perhaps fairgrounds for midwinter fires and midsummer festivals, or simply a communal space for slow dancing, humankind in easy step with the universe. So leave it up to Jim here to talk about inspiration further.
Yeah, I've been inspired by history too. In fact, many years ago, I was a history major as an undergraduate, then saw the light and went to literature. In fact, but history for me at first was American, and then it became European. It's been, yeah, just such a reward for both of us to keep up with that. And then Carol, it was really Carol who sent me back to the prehistoric, for walking about and snooping about and discovering dolmens and stone circles and the like. But here we are. Here I'm being inspired by art. When can I track back my time, my interest in art? I guess a little bit as an undergraduate, but it was really in graduate school that it took hold and has really been good to us as we think about the relationships between art and writing. Also, in graduate school, I got hooked on William Blake. I went to the rare book room one day and saw these absolutely beautiful facsimiles of his illuminated books, illustrations and text together. And I've never recovered since, quite frankly. This particular object we have in front of us is in southern France, in a great museum, a wonderful museum with a wonderful garden called the Mate. The crucifix is 12th century Spanish, and you might be able to recognize the rock, 20th century, above it. So this one is called Wood and Glass. St. Bernard Chapel on the manicured grass grounds of the Mate Museum is not so austere as the saint would have liked. Nonetheless, he stands like a sentry outside chisels and stone and thought for the wooden man inside. Christ unblemished, body pristine, head without a trace of thorns, face tranquil in sleep, deep as understanding. Rock's dove flies above toward the waning moon, barely clears our natural world of tree, flower bed, pot of shoots. So well, I've been so inspired, obviously, the two of us as well, by what you might call portraits, if we're going to switch from the art to people, their thoughts, their feelings, what they go through, things going right, things not going so well. The crocuses will be made clear in the poem, but I love this photograph because it includes the dark, dark darkness, and it includes the bright, bright light, and then so many tones in between. This is bulb planting for a friend of ours a long time ago, Mary. Our young neighbor, 2 doors distant down the street, is planting bulbs beneath her leafless, aging maple. In a normal year, the ground would be snow or ice-capped. Her steel hole-in-one planter hung up for winter on an angled nail in the tool shed to grow spots of rust about its seam and its cutting edge. But today the weather broke warm. Out of season breezes nudged her out of house. A sporty baseball cap atop her head, her slender figure wrapped in bright autumn plaid. Kneeing earth half blended with it, she dreams while poking patiently for soft soil pockets between webs of root, thin as children's fingers, tough as grandmother hands. She's planting crocuses, narcissus, daffodils of sheer muslin, streaked satin, glistening silk. She's intent on protecting sheathed colors yet to be. Creams, richer than English Devon, yellows, brighter than Saharan sun, reds, deeper than any rose can be. She must know she may or may not ever see the births of her midwifery. Her cap covering a shaven head, her mackinaw, a body worn thin by radiation, chemotherapy. But she continues willfully feeling for those places where the ground gives less stubbornly. When she finds them, she cuts a hole, sets a bulb upright, covers it gently, as if she's imitating with attentive eye, caring hand, most graceful act this living earth can offer.
I'll go on now to how we started actually collaborating, relating the photos to the poems. So in the year 2006, as an experiment for our sabbatical, using a sabbatical as an experiment for what our retired life would be, we went to the state of Washington, Southwest Washington. And in preparation for that, we bought a camera. Jim had a camera which he'd used for years, and then wasn't working. So we thought we'd just get this little inexpensive camera and brought it with us. And we settled into a routine there, which became our routine really from when we're away. I go off in the mornings and I hike and I explore the areas that we're in. And Jim writes and reads and really does his own work there. And so I had the camera with me this time, and I'm out there taking photos. And I really felt, I had done some photography as a kid or early adult, but didn't really hook with it. And I just loved being out there with the camera and exploring the areas with the camera. And I was learning what the camera could do. And what it was doing for me was capturing. I have this personality where I have to have these things, and it was capturing. It was capturing beauty. And at that time, I was thinking, well, I capture this beauty and then I share it. And then I share it with others in hopes that they will see how fragile it is and how much it needs to be saved. And so that was really my initial motive as I was going out. So I really became hooked at that point on with photography. So while we were staying in this little house, little cottage in Long Beach Peninsula, in a little village called Oysterville, we had this cottage, but we could only stay in it for a certain period of time because they were using it to house participants for a residency, an artist residency. And we loved the area so much, we said, well, you know, why don't we look into see how we could maybe be how we could come back to Oysterville as, but I wasn't an artist. So I said, well, Jim, you can apply. You can apply so we can come back. And so I'm reading the brochure for it. And in the brochure, it says, accepted participants cannot bring with them pets, in quotes, pets or spouses. Well, I was really taken back by that. I was a little offended, thinking that maybe pets came before spouses and that they would have to stay in the motel about 30 miles down the road. It was an isolated area. So that just got me worked up, and I'm thinking, well, I'm going to apply too, but what can I do? Well, what can I do? So I had just fallen in love with photography. So I said, well, I'll apply as a photographer. And so then we're thinking, well, if one got in and the other one didn't, the one who didn't would be in the motel down the road, right, with the pet. So we're thinking, okay, what do we do? So we decided that we would put Jim's poems into my photographs, make them one piece, apply as a couple. So that was the beginning. And I will show you the beginning. Actually, here, wait. Okay, Oysterville Dawn. Oysterville Dawn. After a night of slow dancing, stars give way to half-drawn shades of light fluttering beneath a ceiling of cloud. Fishing boats slip towards sea along the chipped blade of the knife that is East Long Beach. 3 tower lights across Willapa Bay blink with fearless regularity. As dawn brightens, gulls crowd the sky in unmapped flight. Some hang like gliders, some jerk like kites on too tight strings, some drift to ground like parachutes. They accept what wind currents offer, knowing in their toothpick bones the forever shifting tidal depths of shallows, of sloughs, the rise and fall of water over mudflats and marshlands. Tides beget, nourish, destroy. I like to believe gulls also sense the constant tug of sun and moon that makes our world wobble, always a little out of bounds.
I could say a little something. Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah,
That's it.
We'll stay at Oysterville for a second. Did you want to say?
Yeah, just this was a terrific way for us to begin our very, very first experiments, working together and the like, because Carol had become, familiar and pretty darn good at using the computer. And then each and every photo poem, you select the color and the kind of font, and you decide where on the page the poem will appear, given the photograph itself. So sometimes it's on the right, on the left, up or down, breaking here. And what it did was, in many cases, put a lot of pressure on me to improve what I was saying, if there wasn't enough room, for example, or coming up for a couple of very, very, very short poems in a regular form. And when you're restricted that way, it's amazing how much more attention you pay to each word, to each point of punctuation, to each run over, whatever it is. So it was really a valuable springboard for us, though we didn't realize it completely at the time.
Okay, so when we give presentations or talks, or even when we talk to other people about what we do together, the question often we're asked about the process. How do we work with each other? Does poem come first, last, or whatever? So we'll go through a couple examples of this, but basically before I start, it's not clear cut. It's always on a continuum. There might be one or two times where there was just the photo, period, and then Jim wrote a poem about it, or there was a poem and that out of the blue, just completely an assignment. I went out to take photos. That both of those extremes happen, but the majority of the time it's in between. So we're in southern France, and we observe, both of us, these way that the vines are pruned, and they've been pruned over so many years that many of them in the fields in the area we were that time had this reggae look. So Jim wrote a poem about the reggae, which I will read. I was sent out on a mission to get the right photo. I'd had taken photos of these before, but they weren't the right photo. So this is the right photo for it. It's called Reggae Vines. Dreadlocks of Shiva, braided amidst wildflowers, dance the king's music. So then here's an example of really working together. This is again, this is middle France, central France. And we were staying close to this valley, it's the River Lot. And we drove many times and loved the area. And we both would write, I mean, you wrote your own poem about it. I was taking photos. So it was a matter of working together with it. So I spent a lot of time looking at this, trying to get what I wanted. And it's the limits of doing photography. Anna Lee, I imagine, I mean, yours is abstract, but you have things in mind and you can stretch them out over a canvas. I couldn't, like I wanted more of the field over there, and I wanted it to be more in focus here or there, but I just, no matter how many times I came back, I couldn't get it. But so you wrote a poem, probably a lot about how you can't do it.
Yeah.
Photograph of the River Lot. West of Kajark, the river bends hard as a horseshoe into the second of 3 oxbows. In early morning mist, the photograph, no matter how true, can never match the eye of the photographer that itself shifts focus like a shutterbug with heart aflutter. The results? Branches of foreground ash keener than they are, distant haze not as mysterious, sky brighter in the river than above hills, fields like fleece more than grass, as solitary as that tree in the field. Both camera and the eye behind it view find through their own lens. And this is another example of working together. There was a church in York, England, that was built over an internal, a hidden spring. And the church was closed and was set up for art installations. So the person who put in the art installation had the water running through the middle of the church from the east to the west. And you could light candles and place it in the water and watch the candles flow, which is a tradition in other cultures as well. So we were both taken by this and both worked, and the works went together. So it's called In the Nave of York, St. Mary's. And this is for Annette. Blind springs search for what? Blind springs search for light. They nourish but never see. Flames flicker in glass cups, prick watery memory, stir souls housed in stone to speech. And now this photo I took just as a photo, and Jim liked it. He put it by his desk or had it by him and ended up writing a poem about it. So we've come to the other end of the spectrum.
And this is the North Yorkshire coast. This is Carol's favorite area. So this is Filey Beach in November. And more play with the photographer and the poet. Under a sun wrapped in shroud in a brig dull as a winter plover, the photographer, alone, flockless, squints for flecks of light to see more than gray, until, like a wild-eyed turnstone flickering pebbles in search of food, she catches shadows, playing with shades, truer than sunlight, and pipes like an oyster catcher.
So,
or less, you could say.
So we'd like to finish with The Olive Tree, which is our last poem. And it's also on the back. Christine highlighted it on the back. Favorite photos and poems as well. One of the times when we were in southern France, I would walk often out of the little village we were in, and I would walk past this tree. And I basically fell in love with the tree, the shape of it, and it would always sparkle. It always seemed like it was sparkling, whether it was the sun on it, whether it had been wet, or whether we actually had snow there. But I took so many photos of this trying to get the sparkle until to get the sparkle, but also to get the sense of openness in the tree and the sense of nurturing in the tree. So we'll close with a final poem.
Yeah, with the olive tree. And I don't think it'll be much of a surprise, but this is my poem for Carol. This olive tree is not in Cézanne's terrace. It is not the one he protected from builders who threw stone, wood, and plaster cast-offs thoughtlessly into his garden. It's not the tree he talked to, listened to, sometimes kissed, that grew in strength from the attention. Not, not the one that knew his life story or the one he desired to be buried beneath. This is not a piece of nature he left a living being, chose not to express in paint with geometric eye. What you see is an untouched photograph of an olive tree. It's an object in Provence, alive with sensation, because respected, then loved by its viewer. A tree free of theories about intersecting planes, textures, surface and depth, vibrations of light, tone, and color. It stands like a wise elder who sees more than the plowed field before her and spring brush behind. In each of her arms, a galaxy of silver stars whitens our night sky. Well, thanks so much for listening and looking.
Thank you, Jim and Carol. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Amazing photos, amazing work together.
Yeah.
And now, having been through Europe, we're going to come back to the US and we'll hear from Marjorie and Anna Lee about their work together.
Thank you, Christine. And wow, thank you, Jim and Carol, so much for that presentation. It's going to be hard to act to follow.
Yes, definitely.
So this book had two beginnings, and the first one was in 2018, where Anna Lee and I drove down to Baltimore, or Anna Lee drove me through a blinding rainstorm. And we went to the American Visionary Art Museum because we wanted to see the work of Margaret Munch-Lash. And I'll show you one of her paintings later. And I ended up writing a series of 9 poems about exhibits in that museum. The second beginning of this book was when I was teaching my creative writing class, and I started talking with my students about writing about art. I showed them a number of websites. Karen Elias, who's here tonight, had been in to visit them and showed them some of her photography. And on a whim, I just decided to show them Anna Lee's website, and they loved it. They loved Karen's work, they loved Anna Lee's work, and they started writing poems about both of them. And so after they started writing poems about Anna Lee's work, I thought, well, gee, I should do that too. So I ended up with 18 poems about Anna Lee's work. I just got addicted to doing it, and they came fairly quickly. Usually when I should have been grading stacks of essays, but it was really fun to write them. And kind of unlike when Karen and I worked together, and Christine showed you that book, Karen and I would go back and forth, poem, kind of like you and Jim, like you and Carol did. But with Anna Lee, I wrote all the poems based on the works that were on her website. So this is one of my favorite pieces. and is the first poem in the book and the first painting in the book. And I was really drawn into Anna Lee's work, especially because not only because she's my daughter, but especially because she weaves these words in throughout. And there's always another layer and another layer and another layer. And I loved, I'm also very intrigued with changing perspectives, changing points of views. And that's something that she addresses, I think, a lot. So Anna Lee, if you want to talk a little bit about this one.
Sure. So this painting's called The Library. I have a couple of different themes in here that you'll notice I kind of carry over to some of my other work that you'll see soon. One of them is the idea of perspective. I kind of like placing the viewer in an unfamiliar place, but also distorting the perspective. So it's a place that is not necessarily here on Earth. And something else I really like doing is I really like the idea of chess. I think every time you play chess, it's a different game. And in that way, it makes it very surreal. A chair, like a armchair for me is like, you is really a spot to think. And also, chess is a spot where a game you really think about. And we're also in a library. So this whole painting is really about knowledge. And you'll see my mom mentioned that I put different words and phrases through my paintings. And this one, I have a few that say, can you stay for this? And then little instructions like this way or don't go here. And then you'll see more phrases as we kind of move along into the different paintings. But that's just a little bit about this.
And one of the things about this painting that really intrigued me was this kind of splotch in the middle. And so I had to decide, did she do that on purpose, or was, and I thought, well, of course she did it on purpose, because just like with writing, you make these choices very, very carefully. So I dealt with that in the poem as well. And here are some close-ups of the painting. So you can see the closer you look, the more you see, the more levels are present in the piece. Don't go. You see some of the words that she mentioned, all these different arrows. So one of the things that I would do to help me with these poems before talking with Anna Lee is I would look at her artist statements. And I would also use the words in the poem. So anytime that you see italics in this book, those are words and phrases that came directly from her artist statement, or I pulled from the painting itself. So what book shall we pull from the shelves? What book shall we pull from the shelves? This particular form is called a pantoum. So the second and fourth line are repeated in the first and third line in the next stanza. So it's really woven closely together. And I use those italicized phrases to kind of help me weave it together. So it seemed important. So this poem turned out to be about the choices that we make when we're creating things, when we're creating poems or stories, when we're creating photography, when we're taking photographs, when we're creating any form of art. And here's the painting in our living room family. I love that. Here's one of the pieces by Margaret Munch-Lash that really inspired us to go to that American Visionary Art Museum. So all those poems are called At the American Visionary Art Museum, and then the title of the poem. And I was drawn to this because on the surface, this little girl who happens to be Margaret's daughter when she was younger looks very innocent. And she's holding this rabbit and everything kind of looks sweet. But when you look more closely, you can see that she's actually made up of bees. So there's that sense of what's underneath the surface. And, maybe things aren't well at all. Maybe it's very deceptive on the surface. And I think that's, again, a theme that Anna Lee and I kind of share. Here are some of the other pieces that were at the American Visionary Art Museum. This guy over here is Edgar Allan Poe, and he's made up entirely of peeps, those marshmallow treats that you have at Easter time. This piece by Antar Mikas reminded me, many of you know that I've written an entire book about my father's unsuccessful heart transplant. So this kind of reminded me of kind of a nightmare version of being trapped inside of a heart. I love the work of Greg Mort, and he has a lot of themes that have to do with space and the universe. And this also seemed to me this idea of imagination, of kind of stepping out on the brink of things. Here's another piece in the corner by Margaret Munch-Lash, and this little girl is made up entirely of maggots. And here's one by the psychic Ingo Swan. And then Karen's wonderful photographs. Karen has 4 photographs in the museum book. And this is one that I love, and one that we collaborated on at a local museum where we traded pieces. So this one, Anna Lee and I are going to read together. Do you want to talk about the painting first, Anna Lee, or?
Sure. So this one kind of has an interesting backstory. I painted this several years ago when I was living in North Philly. I had kind of like a rooftop deck, and so I would paint up there when it was warm outside. And so I had been working on this painting, and I had originally started painting a face and a body, and then I felt like it was very cliche. I felt like it was a painting that I've seen a million times before, and I was really looking for it to be different, but I wasn't really sure how to do it. So I kind of wrestled with the idea for a little bit, and then I eventually decided to spray paint over the head. And I had left it upstairs on the top of my deck to dry, and went to work and got a call from my roommate. She was really stressed out, saying, "Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. Someone accidentally knocked some paint over and it spilled on your canvas." And I was like, okay, first thing first, I didn't want her to be like upset or anything. I was like, calm down. She was really stressed out. And I was like, I'll take a look at it when I get home. I'm sure I can fix it, whatever. And when I got home, all these little brown splashes that you see kind of trickling down from the left-hand corner to the right is from the paint that had tipped over and splattered across the canvas. And I looked at her and I was like, thank you. I actually like this better now. And I like to tell that story because a lot of people think mistakes are bad, but I think in art, sometimes they can be really good because they can encourage you to try something new or step out of your comfort zone, or maybe discover something that works that you would have never thought of before. So for me, this took a painting that was I started off as very cliche, very unoriginal, and really turned it into something very unique.
Bare minimum. Beneath whitewashed sternum, neck, skull, the fog of face, the residue of dream released to scream or freedom.
No comment.
Unclothed of skin and woven expectations, bone stacks on bone, exposes the core of caustic commentary. What we see is beneath the said.
No comment.
Is not the bared, but the unbearable.
Here I am.
Of society's design on us.
I am.
Breathing bare.
Here.
And if you see her artist statement, she's raising questions about, what does it really take to be happy? Do we really need what society says we need in order to be happy? And here you can kind of see the outline of where the head was. To me, it looked like the skull was kind of screaming. And so that part got into my poem. This is the piece that originally appeared, the collaboration or the combination that originally appeared in Still Point. And this is the copy of that. And a little story about this is Christine accepted this, and then she asked me if I had any way to contact the artist. Did I know, how to get a hold of her? I said, well, yes, she's my daughter. But since I publish under Maddox, and I go by Maddox Hafer as well, but since I publish under Maddox, she had no way of knowing that. Maybe Anna Lee, you want to talk about this first, and then I'll read the.
Sure. I just want to say I love that little story about it's great how that happened. Sure. So this painting is called Illegitimately Trained. So kind of going along with, some of the other themes I talked about earlier, I really like to place the viewer in an unfamiliar location And that means, you know, a different time, a different place, a different set of rules on gravity, on physics, how everything works, just completely different than anything that we're aware of. So in this painting, I decided to place the viewer in kind of, it's almost like you're looking down on an abstract cityscape. And I have these cotton balls that I hot glued to the canvas in order to make clouds. I was kind of experimenting with, you know, more collage work. I also used some pastels in the background as well, has a lot of pastels and the sunset. So I did the clouds, and then at that time I had been working as like a personal assistant, like slash nanny slash teacher slash a million other things for this family that had 2 girls. And at that time they were, I believe, like 5 and 6. And one, I was really good friends with their mother. So one day I invited them over for dinner with their mother. And I had this painting hanging up in my stairwell. And one of the girls looked at it and she said, they called me Miss Annalie, which I thought was always really cute. And she said, Miss Annalie, I think that looks like smoke. And I just thought that was so interesting because in my head, the whole time it was always clouds until she had said that, and I never saw it as smoke. And then after that day, since then, I always saw it as both. I always saw it as smoke and clouds, and I can never see it as just clouds again. So I wanted to convey that to the viewer in some way that didn't have this child to point that out to them like I did. And so I really wanted the viewer to see both clouds and smoke. So I decided to put a train in the back. And then the title is just a play on words, illegitimately trained, kind of poking fun at the idea. Is art really a legitimate career? Is art valuable? Should we value it in society? So a couple of different issues raised here. It's just a little bit about this.
Illegitimately trained. The cotton balls are real, and the paint. The questions are real, and the light. The small and far away loom as large as the not now, but once real yellow, orange, blue sunset or sunrise, populated by not clouds, but smoke, not puffs, but cotton. The cotton balls are real, and the lines travel someplace across landscapes you've been to in real time or before time or now. Never mind. The bright lines of light shine insight, pool the eyes with swirl that obstructs the tracks traveled once upon a time to someplace not dreamed, right? At least you'll agree the cotton balls are real and the paint, the questions are real and the light, and someone you and not you opened the view to time moving while you and not you waited on a small painted chair and agreed the cotton balls are real. And the paint, the lines line up to something purchased at Rite Aid and Lowe's before the artist pulled out of an open bag, pried out of a sealed can, a train, the tracks, a sky, smokes. You really, come see, the cotton balls are real and the paint. And you can see in some of these the close-up of the chair, but also words woven through. What time is it? That was a piece too that I know I saw Robbie was here, that I know Robbie gave me some good feedback on. And later on, I'm going to read a poem called Your Move, which Nicole Miyashiro gave me some great feedback on as well. Here's another. Well, Anna Lee, do you want to talk about the painting first?
Sure. I made this when I was living in a studio apartment in Pottstown. And it's really about the bottom half is kind of the interior of my apartment. And the top half is really my view of the apartment outside my window. I really like combining interior and exterior elements in my space, as you may have noticed. But for this one in particular, I really wanted someone to see the outside and the inside of my apartment at the same time.
And I'm also very intrigued with, as I said before, this idea of shifting perspective, shifting points of view. interpretation. So King Street, in, out, up, down, any city, town, tacked to the frame of a window is someone not you, looking out, looking in. What is the point of view? The apple on the tree or the counter, the apple of my eye, slicing the view into juicy sections while the downtown tilts this way or that, and the who sees it all devours or nibbles between lines that could be sun or paint or poem or street or icicle melting or mind meandering here or there, now or now. And there's the apple. This piece is one that I really wanted to give a kind of a toppling effect. I love this piece, and there's so much motion and movement in it. And I'll let Anna talk about the painting first.
So, kind of the similar themes that I've talked about before. I like, having the viewer in an unfamiliar location. I really think ladders are a good way to do that, because and in this specific painting, when you climb up the ladder, you don't see where you're going. So it's kind of a mystery. And then same thing with the boat, is it going towards that location? Is it going away? And then what are you going towards or away from? It doesn't really look like anything that is recognizable. So that's just a little bit about this.
Good. Arc. Ladders to below, above to, turn off the faucet to, weeping to, turn on the spigot to, here now to, unleash the liquid to, water to, weary to, whiplash to, swirl in the iris of horizon to, witness the wet of windswept, to hide in the eye of reject, to float in the drowning of hopeless, to breathe in the rattling of broken, to gasp with the mouth of ocean, to curl with the swish of sudden, to gulp with the whir of twisters, to swallow with the salt of senseless, to blur with the vision of serpents, to spew with the sputum of whales, to reek with the regurgitation of Jonah, to sink in the rise of remorse, to know with the blind eye of Noah, to soar on the dry sky with dove, to circle the submersion of world, to flutter and hover, to dive and to discover, to finally land. And I wanted to give that sense of, are you still in the midst of danger, or have you arrived and you're now safe?
I wanted to just add too a little bit about the process on this. I used acrylic paint, and then I also, for those kind of really fluid marks that you're seeing, I actually filled up a ketchup bottle with paint and drew on it. So that's a lot of what the water is from the ketchup bottle.
Yeah, I'm glad you added that story. That's a good story. And then this is a huge piece, and this is usually our process went where I would use Anna Lee's website and I would use her artist description to create the poem. Then I would send it to her and kind of see if I was on the money or not, because I wanted to also capture what she was trying to do. But I, didn't want to be told that at the beginning, except for her artist statement, because I wanted the discovery process myself as well. But this was a piece where she gave me some suggestions about Alice in Wonderland, I remember. And this is also one that I got some really good feedback on from Nicole. Anna Lee, do you want to talk about this painting? Just to give you a sense of the enormity of this painting.
Sure. So this painting was made on a giant drop cloth. I worked on this a lot during COVID. This was a good COVID project. And it is acrylic paint. It took me about 7 months to do most of it. And I was doing it basically on the weekends, probably about 10 hours on the weekends. So it was like pretty hefty, like about 6 months of work. And so there's a lot going on in this piece. This piece for me is kind of my interpretation of my own Alice in Wonderland. In the story Alice in Wonderland, Alice creates her own world. And for me, art is my own world. So I kind of referenced a little bit of Alice in Wonderland in this piece. I have the Queen of Hearts on a card on the left-hand side, and some different game pieces. Also just a lot of like just imagery going on. And then I have a lot of phrases in here that are really important. Some of the phrases I have in here are don't look, up, down, here, where, there, nowhere, watch your step, why would I trust you, and why would I lie to you? And so those are really important because I made this giant painting with all these like really bright, beautiful colors, and there's a lot going on. But at the same time in the painting, I wrote, don't look at it. And so it's kind of like a giant contradiction in a way. I made a big painting, but that I don't want you to look at it. But then do I want you to look at it or not? It's kind of up to you. And then one of the other things is, you know, why would I lie to you? I have written in there. And then also, why would I tell you the truth? So also two very contradictory things. I'm kind of in this painting asking you to trust me, and then at the same time saying, why would I lie to you? You know, trust me. Why would you not trust me? So I'm really contradicting myself a lot in this painting. It's very topsy-turvy, like very Alice in Wonderland vibe. And then for the giant sun / moon, I actually kind of made it ambiguous. So, you know, whatever you want it to be, it could be a sun or a moon, or maybe it's a planet. It could be whatever you want. So it kind of in this way, it can be any piece of artwork that I make is also kind of your Wonderland as well. So that's just a little bit about this.
Okay, and again, I took those words that were in the painting or in the artist's description and put them into the poem. And I made the title a question, even though the painting is a statement. Your move. Why would I lie to you? The sun glimmers like a lost pocket watch, melting. See how it drips radiance into each shadow, shade of thought, each mountain ravine, each swirling field of grass arching toward evergreen. Follow the hair wherever. Better late than never, never, falling from here to there. Watch your step. Inside the mind, another landscape erupts, oversized, shrunk, all meaning slanted. Why would I tell you the truth? The missing pieces are yours for the choosing. King or pawn, roll the dice and pick a card to view the other side of story. Daily, the Queen of Hearts rages. Why would I lie to you? Survival is the decision of the soul. One square forward, one square back, one square diagonal, one square sideways, here, there, nowhere. What will you make of this empty space, the deserted chessboard filling quickly with choice? Time is up. The wild sky is falling. Why would I tell you the truth? Or rising with the flares that you've ignited, your luminous lines and arrowed signs leading to destinations far beyond this canvas, where the surreal whirls a vision of green that keeps the world swaying. Don't look up, down, here, where. Just breathe. Don't look. Just keep seeing what's right behind the stars, the skin, the Cheshire's grin. Why would I lie to you? Your move. And here it is a little bit larger. And you can see how you just keep finding more and more and more. There's just more and more to discover. I think for the sake of time, maybe we'll skip this one. Okay. And this is a fun one to read, and I'll let Anna Lee tell the story first.
Forgot to unmute myself. This is one of my favorite stories to tell because I think a lot of people have witnessed this happening or can relate to it in some way or have heard a story about a similar situation. So basically I made, and you'll notice when I'm talking, like a lot of these paintings I make are very situational. I talk about when I made them, you know, kind of what I was thinking because the time in my life is really kind of relates to what I paint. So I made this painting based on a situation that I had in college. So when I was in college, I worked at a daycare, like part-time in the mornings, just to help out in between classes and stuff. And the daycare I had worked at, I was just kind of helping out as a floater in the mornings, just for ratio purposes, helping the teachers out with kids and stuff like that. It was a very nice daycare. It was very, very expensive to send your kid to. It was basically the nicest facility I've ever seen. I just couldn't imagine how much money it would be to send your kid there. It must have been like insanely expensive, very nice. They basically had anything that you wanted, you know, different, you know, languages, different equipments, lots of opportunities for the kids. But the longer I started working there, the more I started to realize it wasn't really as great as it seemed, because they were really kind of treating the kids like middle schoolers, like, you know, when you're done with this, then you got to go to this class, then you got to go to this class, then you got to do this. It was very like regimented, very strict. And that's not really how a kid should be treated at 4 or 5 years old. It's just not, it doesn't work very well. It makes them unhappy. And it's not the best way for them to learn. So I really kind of realized that when I was sitting in a classroom one day helping out, and the teacher was talking about the letter E. And there were a couple of us sitting at different tables, and our job was kind of just to explain to a group of like 4 or 5 kids who are about 5 years old, you know, how to write the letter E. And so that's what we were doing. I was teaching them how to write it. We were just talking about the letter E. And then the timer had just about gone off, and one of the kids turned to me and asked me a question that was that actually made me laugh. She said, "How do you spell narwhal?" And it was just like the most random thing. We were talking about the letter E, and then she said that, and I actually laughed because I just wasn't expecting it. And then I answered her, and I told her how to spell it, which, first of all, I was just impressed that she knew what that was. And second of all, I was just so impressed that she had asked how to spell it, because for like a 5-year-old kid at the age, asking how to spell something is really incredible. That's exactly kind of what you want, because that encourages them to ask about like other words, how to spell them, and kind of gets into reading. So I answered her, started spelling it to her. And at that time, another teacher had walked by, overheard that 1 3-second conversation I had between the child, and reprimanded both me and the child for that, because at that specific moment where she was walking by, we were not talking about the letter E. And I just thought that was very impactful, because we were in a school, I was a teacher, a student had asked me a question, and yet I was told I was not allowed to answer the question. And for me, that was really like, I just kind of felt like very contradictory. It didn't make any sense in my head. And so that's what this painting is all about. It's all about the letter E, and it kind of looks like it's going down the drain. Have this swirling effect going on. And I just love that story so much. And hopefully, you know, one of you relate to that or seen that happening, and just know their questions are good. We want questions. Those encourage learning, and you should always ask questions.
And this is a great example where Anna Lee's artist statement really gave me a way into the painting, especially with her more abstract work. It would have been hard to get all of that without her description here. And then I found out the rest of the story after I wrote the poem. So the letter E. Don't distract me with questions, those extraneous detours that topple learning. E and only E is today's lesson. The enemy of schedules is curiosity, omissions necessary for well-paced delivery. We yearn for no distractions. Don't ask me questions, time-wasting, silly digressions of how and why. Pay attention. Our concern is E and only E. Today's lesson is letter 5. Your inquisitive obsessions are enemies of order. Don't ruin class by distracting me with questions. Creativity's the one transgression I won't allow. Sit still, don't squirm. E and only E is today's lesson. Up next, the letter F, natural progression of learning. Quiet, it's not your turn to talk. Don't distract me with questions. E and only E is today's lesson. And some close-ups. And we'll just do two more. This is a short piece. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, right, Anna Lee?
Yeah, you can.
AM and PM. Between ante and post, the self's permission slip to tarry. Invite the sun in for tea and toast, spread with lazy, while the mind wanders between in and out, mirroring the weather of wonder. Stay a while and admire. And then we come back to the armchair at the end of the book. And Anna Lee, you want to talk about this, and then I'll finish with the poem.
This painting is just a little bit about what I talked about earlier, how I really like to think about my work. I don't like to rush the painting process. I think about it and then I paint. And when I paint, it comes because of the thought process. So I think really as an artist, it's important to take time for yourself and think. And I really think an armchair symbolizes that. And so that's exactly what this painting is about. And that's why it's called Wild Rest.
Yeah, and I would agree with that with writing as well, that sometimes you're not physically writing, but the thoughts are still going around in your head, and you kind of need that in between time, that time to kind of mull over the thoughts before actually putting it down on paper. And this is a sestina where the 6 words at the end of a line are repeated in a set pattern throughout, and then the very last stanza has all 6 words in it. Wild rest. What does it mean to rest this lazy afternoon in an overstuffed chair, gazing out at a world so wild with wonder, the mind cannot help but wander out amidst the trees, relax in the hammock of wind. In this cushioned space, imagination rewinds the mind with quiet, calls in the calm. The rest of the house yawns while you stretch out, relax into the imprint of self in the tattered chair before the familiar view. A wonder, really, the paradox of renewal, its wild witness of a world gone wild with vision. Passive breeze become wind, whipping into adventure to wander the rugged terrain of contemplation. Likewise, rest is a carnival tour of the spontaneous. Strap in. This chair's roller coaster ride begins with relaxation, while the brain unbuckles boundaries. Relax and the mind climbs high. Breathe and far below, wild whack-a-moles pop in and out of fields. From a simple chair, well worn with inspiration, the valley's wind carries you both to and beyond the now. The rest is the miracle of repose, the way doze leads to wonder and wonder, funhouse of mind's museum. Wander the labyrinth of spirit, inhale, exhale, relax, breathing in the scent of the divine, each blessed rest of Sabbath. Creation's electric chariot ride to the wild begins with, be still and know. All paths winding back to this room in its well-worn chair. So count to 10, sing childhood's ABCs in the same chair where your mother rocked you into a world of wonder, where you first learned that breath and wind are cousins, reciting rituals of relaxation in a world steeped in chaos. Embrace the wild in calm, the journey in rest. Here in this chair, the origins of wonder. Here, the rhythm of wind, breathing relaxation, daily recreated in your own wild, wild rest. And then we have it. So thank you very much.
Thank
Thank you
you,
so much.
Marjorie and Anna Lee. Thank you very much. Yes. feast for the eyes and the ears and the mind. There are a couple questions here, but I want to start with one for Anna Lee.
Sure.
Looking at your work, there's so much in each piece. And I'm wondering if you sort of plan everything out in the beginning and pencil it out in a drawing, or do you put one thing and then go, oh, I think I'll add this over here, and I think I'll add this over here. How does that work?
That's basically the second thing is how I do. I never plan anything out. I think about it and I look. I can't do it if I can't see it. So the best way for me to do that is to start a painting. And my professor actually taught me this, bring it back to my house and just walk by it. You walk by it a million times in a day and you don't even realize. And a lot of it's subconscious. So as I'm passing the painting like 10 times a day, I'm like, oh, this. And then one day I'm like, it would be really nice if I had like a little bit of green in there. And I'll like remember that. And then when I sit down to paint one day, when I feel like I'm ready to paint and I sit down, I remember that I thought, oh, that would look like a little bit of green, and I'll just add that and it'll be done. But a lot of the process is just thinking about it and looking. Less of the process is actually painting.
Interesting. That's
But
great.
when I kind of start with an abstract piece, a really abstract piece, I kind of make a mark and then respond to the mark and respond to that mark and respond. And then it just kind of all comes together eventually.
Interesting. Thank you. There was a question early on about process. I think that question was answered. I think Jim and Carol talked about their process, and certainly Marjorie and Anna Lee did. Any remaining questions about process that anybody wants to ask? No? Okay. And there was also a question from Marjorie for Jim and Carol. How do you see the poetry and photography conversing not only with each other, but also with history, landscape, and more? How do you see the poetry and photography conversing with history, landscape, and more? Oh, unmute yourself. There you go.
We have a good friend who often comes to talks, and he asks these huge questions that incorporate all of our work. So thank you, Marjorie. He's not here tonight, and you did this for him. So I think as we were talking, hopefully that a lot of what we said and did answers that question. I mean, so whether it's art and our relationship to art, what do you want to know?
Well, no, I just think if I'm understanding the question right, there, at the very, very best, there's really a connection between the material and how you're dealing with it. And the longer you work with it and like, the closer you get to it, to a point. And I think this is a real reference to your work too, is that you really do move beyond understanding, what we might call somewhat cynically an academic understanding. So when we have subjects that's history or art or whatever it is, as Carol mentioned, she was when she was talking, the object really is to open up as completely as you can. But again, with yours, Anna Lee, attention, ever so important, but not just a reasoning attention, it's a sensibility. It's a move beyond just thought and understanding. And I have no idea if that was a response to the question, but whatever the material is, if it's history, if it's art, if it's portraiture, if it's human beings, whatever it is, that's the objective. Nature, particularly for Carol. So I'm not sure I did such a good job answering it, but it was a big question.
Any other questions or thoughts or comments from anyone? Yes, Barbara. Unmute yourself, Barbara. Barbara. Oh, there you go. Oh, unmute yourself. There you go. All right, you're set.
Okay, thank you so much. This was a lovely, lovely evening, and I enjoyed the poetry and the photographs. And I just had a question for Anna Lee. When I was looking at your work, I felt so much like I was in a fairy tale. And I wondered if you thought of your work as a fairy tale.
I absolutely do. So I did work with kids a lot, like teaching, tutoring, and I really discovered that I like doing things like swinging and playing with Play-Doh. And so I feel like I really am a big kid in a way. And so this and like a lot of my favorite childhood stories were like Alice in Wonderland and Narnia, which are very like surreal children's books. And I think a lot of that comes out in my artwork because those are the things that I read when I was a kid. Those are the kinds of games that I played with. And I feel like it comes out in my work. I really want the viewer to feel like a child again. And Picasso once said that the best children are artists, and I couldn't have agreed more.
Thank you.
Amy Harris, unmute yourself, please.
Okay.
There you go.
Is there, okay, this question is for Anna Lee. Your pieces are so musical. There's motion and repetition. Do you ever think about that? It being as a musical piece? I'm
Absolutely.
retired music teacher, so.
Oh, well, that's a really good insight because I actually listen to a lot of music when I paint, and I cannot paint if I don't listen to music. It just doesn't, it's something about the rhythm, the flow. It just makes the piece. And I've tried like painting without music, and it just doesn't do it. I'm not as creative. I feel like it has a lot to do with like the rhythm of where I place the colors and how the colors are like evenly kind of spaced out on the painting goes along with the rhythm in the song. So I feel like it's like I'm immersing myself in the arts process, and that's how it comes out. But thank you for mentioning that. That's a great observation, especially from a music teacher. That's great to hear.
Yeah, that's really good. Thank you.
Anyone else? What an excellent question. Grant and Carrie, again, unmute yourself, please. Okay, there you go.
Hi, I came in later. Hi, Marjorie, how are you? Anna Lee, this is a comment for you to say, hang in there as far as the teaching goes. I was a teacher for 30 years, kindergarten, grade, first grade, second grade in Canada. Also worked in the daycares, and I absolutely understand what you went through as far as the letter E.
Mm-hmm.
And you had it right.
Thank you.
So right, because I taught through the arts, and even grade 2 and grade 5 with those ages, it was so important. In fact, best practices for teaching is to take those teachable moments, those questions, Marjorie, and put them into your lesson. The best teaching happens when you may have a lesson plan in your head, but you cannot follow it, pun intended, to the letter, because it will totally miss.
It will make them hate learning.
Well, and they say that studies say that a lot of what we do in teaching is teach the creativity out of the kids. And if you go against that, it's so much, the learning is so much deeper and means so much more to those kids. And you get that connection with that child as well. So bravo.
Thank you so much for that. That was great to hear that, especially with your experience and everything. Really encouraging.
All right, anyone else? Wonderful sharing going on here. Anything else? No. All right. Well, I want to thank Marjorie and Anna Lee. Jim and Carol. Really an excellent, excellent presentation. And thank all of you for coming. Lots of really wonderful chats going on during this. I love the connection between Carol's trees and the Van Gogh paintings. So, and his treatment of trees. So we just love that interaction. So thank you all again, and have a good evening.
Thank you,
Thank you so much,
Christy.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Thanks so much, Marjorie.
Yes, it was so good to get to know you a little bit.
Yeah, yeah,
And
really.
I've been enjoying reading the books too.
We have to.
Yeah, the library, by the way, is probably my favorite. I just think it's fantastic. The library, okay?
Hey, Marianne. Okay, bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, bye-bye.
Bye.